Oh yeah, there's an image I've been sitting with today. It's included with this post, along with this video. The text within the image says, I returned the version of me everyone expected. It didn't fit anyways. Yesterday, after decades, I finally stood before a judge to change my legal name and gender marker. Most people will hear that sentence and imagine that yesterday was the beginning. It wasn't. Yesterday was somewhere near the end, or perhaps the end of the beginning, because the story doesn't start with gender. It starts with a question that arrived when I was 17 years old. Who am I, actually? Not philosophically, literally. The story I'd grown up with about where I came from simply wasn't true. Like many adopted people, I discovered that my origin story had been assembled for me. It functioned. It gave everyone something to tell a child, but eventually the seams began to show. So I started looking. First came names, then addresses. No internet at the time. Had letters, phone books, long distance phone calls. Eventually found my birth parents. That part, surprisingly, was the easy part. The harder part was discovering that everyone carried a different history. Why I had been taken into care. Why my parents had signed away their rights to me. Why I had been adopted. Where had I been born? Even what what had I originally been called? Stories that contradicted one another. Some only slightly, some so completely that they can all possibly describe the same child. By 22, I had gathered enough certainty about one thing. The name I had been carrying no longer belonged to me. A friend's mother, an attorney in Kansas, stood beside me whilst I petitioned the Johnson County Court for a legal name change. That was my second name change. The first happened when I was adopted. For a while, I thought perhaps that chapter had closed. Life became survival. I came back to California via a long wandering that took me across almost the entirety of the Western world. When I got to California, I started over from nothing. I didn't have money to continue searching. More importantly, another mystery had begun demanding every spare piece of attention I possessed. Why did I seem to move through the world so differently than everyone else? That search led eventually to an autism diagnosis. Back then it was still called Asperger's. And along with it came occupational therapy, language therapy, sensory integration therapy. Years spent trying to understand an architecture I didn't yet have words for. At the same time, queer Los Angeles was disappearing. The AIDS epidemic had hollowed out entire generations. Communities that had tried to grow back were fragile, sometimes raided by police, sometimes simply gone. It was a very liminal time. Then life accelerated. I became a forensic scientist, an analyst, an instructor. Work carried me around North America. So I took advantage. I managed to secure bookings in places where I may have relatives. Sacramento, Walla Walla, Baton Rouge, the middle of Michigan, coastal South Carolina, Toronto, Ottawa. Every trip became another chance to chase another fragment of where I had come from. More relatives, more stories, more contradictions. By then, I possessed 3 different original birth names and 2 different birthplaces. None of them matched the birth certificate in my possession. It became impossible not to notice something else. Difference wasn't always welcome. Neither was queerness. Neither was being from somewhere else. Canada, I think, it felt gentler. But even there, I was an obvious outsider. 6'7", Scottish accent, a life nobody could quite place. Eventually, I realized something. The greatest contradiction wasn't in the paperwork, it was inside of me. I'd spent decades assembling evidence about where I came from. I'd spent almost no time asking who I actually was. So at 53, I came out publicly. I didn't really know what that meant, not completely. I simply knew that pretending had become more exhausting than uncertainty. Since then, many of you watched me think in public. The outside became less a publication than a script garden. Thousands upon thousands of words, right? Not constructing an identity, excavating them, discovering that I was a Gestalt processor, discovering why language had always arrived late for me, discovering why coherence mattered to me more than certainty. About 6 months ago, enough of those threads had finally woven together. I had the documents. I had an extraordinary legal team who somehow managed to compress my wonderfully complicated life into a 17-page petition. In California, these cases are usually simple. You file, the public has an opportunity to object. If nobody objects, the judge signs the order administratively. Most people never see the courtroom. And of course, mine didn't happen that way. Instead, about a week ahead of when that was all supposed to take place, I had received a notice. A filing had been dismissed. No explanation. But a hearing had been scheduled. The hearing was yesterday. There were 27 matters before the court. Mine was number 25. So me being me, already in a panic, I arrived early, 8 o'clock, for an 8:30 calendar. And then I waited. Hour after hour, watching everyone else's cases conclude. By 11 o'clock, there was only one person left, one case left, me. The judge, the Honourable Daniel L. Alexander, called me forward. And then something happened that I will remember for a very long time. He told me that he had never seen a filing quite like mine, and he wanted to get it right. And he had questions. He wanted me present so I could answer them before he signed anything. Now, if you know anything about me, you'll know exactly why that sentence landed where it did. I'm an autistic Gestalt processor. Unexpected questions don't arrive as neat little files waiting to be opened. They arrive as enormous living holes. The knowing is there. Finding the particular doorway into that knowing takes time, especially under oath, especially during panic attack. Especially when the last time you gave sworn testimony was during a homicide trial at the beginning of COVID, a trial that becomes memorable because opposing counsel's expert infected the whole courtroom. Old nows don't stay politely in the past. They arrive all at once. They became present again. So whilst I was standing there answering questions about my life, every other courtroom I've ever stood in was standing there too. But the judge was patient, exceptionally patient. He apologized several times for bringing me in. He explained every question. He waited until I found the language. Eventually, there were no questions left. He signed the order. He thanked me for coming, wished me well. I made it back to the car. I drove home. And then, because I'm autistic, I melted down. And we almost always make it home first, don't we? The body waits until the danger has passed. But this morning, I woke up to something I've never quite had before. No happiness or relief, more like foundation. The first time in my life, the documents beneath my feet point in the same direction as the person standing upon them. Jamie is no longer my preferred name. It's my legal first name. That part, strangely enough, was the easiest. Choosing my middle name was a bit more involved. My new middle name is Rowan. And I chose it because the Rowan has always been special to me, always been a threshold tree. a guardian in Scottish and Irish tradition that stands where worlds meet, at gates, at doorways, at the edges between safety and uncertainty. It protects the home, it accompanies wise women. It appears again and again in stories about transformation, foresight, healing, and the quiet strength of those who keep watch at the boundary. It wasn't a warrior, it's a keeper. That felt right. Because I don't think my life has been about becoming someone different. It's been about guarding something that was always there until the world finally became capable of recognizing it. The image that I'm sharing with this, it says, I returned the version of me everyone expected. And for most of my life, I kept trying to make that version fit. The adopted child, the gifted athlete, the scientist, the provider, the expert, the witness, the professional. Each one of those was real. None of them were the whole of me. Yesterday, I didn't return those people. I simply stopped asking them to carry a life that they had never been built to hold. The work isn't finished, obviously. Now comes Social Security, DMV, banks, passport, teaching credential, every document that still belongs to the other chapter. Administrative work has a peculiar way of following existential work. But for the first morning and 55 years, the foundation is coherent. And from here, everything else can finally be built. Thanks for being with me this morning.